The last thing Corvan Hale expected that peaceful morning was for his entire life to shift in a single moment, yet that's exactly what happened. The sun had just risen over the quiet downtown café district, painting the streets in gentle gold. When he stepped out of the small apartment he rented for himself and his daughter Mila, he had no idea that just a few blocks away, a woman dressed in elegance and heartbreak was about to crumble, and that he, just a tired single dad trying his best, would be the one to catch her. Some stories begin loudly with fireworks and chaos, others begin softly with a man who had given up on miracles and a woman who had never known genuine kindness. But this one began with a silent fall, a woman's tears hitting the ground and a stranger whose heart was strong enough to lift her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unexpected blessings crossing your path when you least expect it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. Corvan pushed his old stroller along the sidewalk, the wheels squeaking in that familiar way that used to embarrass him but had now become part of his rhythm. His daughter, Mila Hale, 6 years old with curly light brown hair and sleepy eyes, held a small plush bear close to her chest. Mornings were their favorite time together because the world was quiet and gentle, and didn't demand more from him than he could handle. He had been raising her alone since her mother walked out 3 years ago, leaving him with nothing but a pile of unpaid bills and a child who deserved the world. Over time, he had learned to survive patching tires at a local repair shop, taking extra jobs whenever possible, and stretching every dollar while pretending he wasn't exhausted. Every parent knew what it was like to pretend, but single parents perfected the art. Corvan was no different. He was always pretending everything was fine so Mila wouldn't worry. Maybe he had gotten used to pretending because even he didn't realize how close he was to breaking. Just across the street, on the patio of a fancy café, sat Kessara Wynn, though no one recognized her. Without her usual office entourage or the intimidating aura she wore like a tailored suit. In the daytime sun, she looked almost ordinary, except for the elegance that clung to her naturally. Head of Wynn Global Industries, a multi-billion-dollar empire, she was known in business circles as unshakable, decisive, and icy in negotiation. But at that moment, Kessara wasn't the billionaire CEO the world feared and admired. She was a woman whose heart felt painfully human. She had spent the past hour waiting for someone who wasn't coming. She had been stood up, not by a business partner, but by someone she had hoped would see her for who she was when the money and reputation were stripped away. She thought maybe she deserved a morning of normalcy, of human connection. Instead, she sat alone, a cup of untouched coffee before her, hands trembling slightly as she attempted to hold herself together. From the corner of his vision, Corvan noticed movement, something small and quiet that somehow felt urgent. He didn't know why he turned his head, but when he did, he saw her, a woman sitting alone, shoulders weakened in a way expensive clothes couldn't hide. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but there was something unmistakably heavy about her silence. Corvan wasn't the type to get involved in strangers' lives. Life had given him too many responsibilities to add more. But Mila tugged his sleeve, her little voice soft as she pointed toward the woman. Children always sensed sadness quicker than adults did, and Mila's eyes reflected immediate concern. Something in Corvan shifted, a quiet instinct, a tug that felt familiar. He approached subtly, staying at a respectful distance, unsure of whether to speak. Yet he couldn't walk away, not from someone who looked so painfully alone. Kessara had expected only embarrassment that morning, but she didn't expect kindness. When she finally lifted her head and met Corvan's eyes, something in her steadiness began to crumble. He didn't know her wealth, her company, or the intimidating walls she usually carried around her. He simply saw a woman hurting, and for Kessara that was new. She was used to people wanting something from her, calculating how they spoke, measuring every interaction for profit. But this man, this single father, with worry lines etched into his face, and an aura of genuine sincerity, asked nothing. Corvan didn't bombard her with questions or offer empty platitudes. Instead, he simply sat down with Mila beside him, allowing silence to exist without judgment. And for the first time in years, Kessara felt seen in a way she never had been. The gentle rhythm of the cafe patio blended with the soft hum of daytime traffic, creating a scene that felt delicately cinematic. Corvan told her, in his quiet and humble way, that life had a strange way of breaking people before blessing them. He spoke of resilience without preaching, of imperfection without shame. Kessara found herself listening not as a CEO evaluating words, but as a woman who had forgotten the warmth of sincerity. She felt guilty, almost painfully so, because sitting across from her was a man who had clearly weathered storms far worse than being stood up, yet he spoke hope into her heart like it was second nature. After a while, Mila leaned toward Kessara, offering her plush bear as if it were a sacred gesture of comfort, and it broke Kessara open completely. The simplicity of a child's compassion, so pure and unfiltered, loosened something in her chest that years of wealth, power, and control had kept locked away. She felt her heart soften into something she hadn't recognized in years: vulnerability. She didn't tell Corvan who she was. She didn't want to. She wanted him to see her exactly as she was in that moment, someone real, someone flawed. Someone who needed gentleness. Corvan had no clue he was comforting one of the wealthiest women in the country. All he saw was a human being who needed a moment of peace. He offered her company, kindness, and space to breathe. Kessara, in return, offered him something he hadn't expected either: a listening presence, an attentive warmth that made him feel like his exhausting struggles mattered. The more they spoke, the more she realized he had a quiet wisdom, the kind forged from hardship, not education or privilege. And Corvan realized that Kessara had a depth he couldn't quite place, a resilience shaped by pressure rather than poverty. The morning stretched gently into early afternoon. The sunlight shimmered across the cafe windows as though blessing this unexpected encounter. Corvan needed to head to work soon, but a rare feeling washed through him, a wish for this moment not to end. Kessara felt the same. Before leaving, Corvan's phone buzzed with a message from his manager, reminding him of a shift he couldn't afford to lose. He stood reluctantly, feeling he was walking away from something important, without understanding what it was. Kessara watched him rise, her heart tightening. She didn't want him to leave. She didn't want this fragile connection to fade. Without thinking, she offered to walk with him and Mila. Corvan hesitated but agreed, the three of them strolling down the sunlit sidewalk like a family that never realized it had formed. As they walked, Corvan spoke about the challenges of raising Mila alone, the missed meals, the sleepless nights, the fear of failing her. He didn't tell these stories for sympathy, just to share. Kessara listened with a tenderness she didn't know she possessed. She admired him. She admired the strength it took to love so deeply while carrying so much. And Corvan, though unaware of her identity, admired her too, her compassion, her quiet curiosity, and the light she shone even through sadness. Days passed, and their paths crossed again, first unexpectedly, then intentionally. Kessara found herself seeking reasons to return to the same café. Corvan found himself waking with a sense of anticipation. Their conversations grew deeper, filled with laughter, vulnerability, and unspoken warmth. Mila adored Kessara, and Kessara adored her back, which only tightened the unseen thread weaving them together. And slowly, quietly, Kessara fell for Corvan, not because of his strength, but because of the way he remained gentle despite everything he had endured. Corvan began to sense that there was more to Kessara than she let on, but he never imagined the truth. He thought maybe she was an office manager, or a designer, or someone with a stable life he could only dream of. But even then, he didn't feel intimidated. She made him feel like an equal, like someone worthy of her time and presence. One afternoon, everything shifted. Corvan received a notice from his building manager. The rent had increased. He couldn't afford it. He faced the possibility of losing his apartment. That evening, he sat at a park bench, Mila asleep beside him, worry heavy in his chest. Kessara found them there, the sunset painting the world gold behind her. When he admitted what was happening, shame in his voice, she felt her heart twist painfully. She wanted to help. She could fix this problem with a single phone call. But she knew he would reject her help if he knew who she really was. It was time to tell him. The next morning, under the clear daytime sky, she revealed her truth. She told him she wasn't just Kessara. She was Kessara Wynn, CEO of Wynn Global, heir to a vast empire. Corvan froze, the world spinning. He felt blindsided, embarrassed, almost foolish. He thought he had been getting close to someone ordinary, someone like him. Instead, she belonged to a world far above his reach. But before he could retreat into insecurity, she stepped closer, tears threatening her composure, and told him she had never felt real with anyone until him. That he made her human in ways money never could. That she cared for him, and Mila deeply, not out of pity, but out of genuine affection. Corvan didn't know how to respond at first, but when Mila woke and ran straight into Kessara's arms, something clicked. Love didn't care about wealth or status. Love